Having owned both a Panigale 899 and a Panigale V2, I do have a proper soft spot for the baby Panigale range. That 955cc engine in the V2 and that monocoque chassis combo is just sublime, and to be honest, in most scenarios it's so much more usable and so much easier and more accessible to ride than the V4. So in a street fighter format, surely it should be perfect. Well, I've had it for a month now to find out. So I mentioned before that I have my own Panigale V2, and this thing shares, as you can imagine, pretty much the exact same platform. So it's got the same engine, same chassis, same tech, but it's not exactly the same. Due to some intake changes, a few other bits, it actually makes 2 less horsepower, 151 horsepower, and it actually makes 2 foot-pound less of torque as well, so it makes 75. It's got a slightly different rear sprocket on it, so it's been geared for a little bit more acceleration, and also, well, it's had the Streetfighter makeover, so loses the fairings, gets that more aggressive stance, gets them higher bars, and they've also given it some slightly softer suspension settings, some slightly softer brake pads, and also a slightly longer swing arm too, to get a bit more weight over the front and just to make it a bit more stable in this platform. It's not the same bike, they have actually made quite a few changes to it. I loved the old Street Fighter platform, and this thing is exactly the same. It's bold, it's big, it's aggressive, it's everything that a naked bike should be. And in person, it just looks gorgeous. It really does have that wow factor. The only thing I would say about the looks of it is I think there's probably a little bit too much plastic on there for me for what is essentially a 15 grand bike. I would like to see a little bit more carbon on these little black bits and stuff down here, but it's still a cracking looking machine from afar or up close. That single-sided swing arm, them aggressive lights, it really does look the part. And it feels the part too. It doesn't feel like a sort of baby or a middleweight machine. When you get on it, it is a big, roomy bike. I'm 5'7" and there is a lot of space on there. I think this would be really well suited to someone a bit taller. The seat height's quite high, so if you've got short legs, you'll have to have a bit of reach to get over it, and the reach to the bars as well, because they're big and wide, it has got a big reach as well. It's really comfy for me. I find there's loads of space, but if you're taller, it will really accommodate you, I reckon. But as for the riding experience, this bike delivered just what I wanted. It would have been a hard task for Ducati to have messed this up, and they really haven't. The mixture of that monocoque chassis and that 955cc twin-cylinder engine just makes such a great platform for a street fighter. Where the V4 has got so much power, this is actually a lot more manageable and a lot easier to ride harder. You can sort of ride it closer to its limits. You can ride it sort of higher up the rev range and faster without getting into silly license losing speeds. And to be honest, I actually think it makes it more enjoyable. It's really capable. It's super easy to ride hard, but it's also quite happy being docile. There's some nice little features on this. Like in the exhaust, there's a little butterfly that opens up. So when it's sitting at idle, it's got that beautiful growl to it. But when you're sort of cruising along 30 mile an hour, sort of 3,000 RPM, it honestly, you barely get any engine noise at all. And things like that are just really well thought out and make this bike a real joy to ride. But this thing's more about being ridden hard and enjoyed. And although there's some slightly softer settings in that shell suspension, it really feels pliant and pliable, and you can really throw it into corners. Them Brembos are just incredible. Couple that with some really grippy Pirellis and you've got yourself something that will keep up with just about anything on the road. I can't really imagine needing anything more on a Sunday afternoon. It feels more like a proper range topping machine rather than sort of a middleweight. So this sits somewhere in the realm of 890 Ducati, Street Triple RS and MT09 SPs, but I wouldn't put it in that category at all because it sort of feels like a much more grown-up bike than them three. So for example, I find that all of them bikes can be quite playful. You can sort of hit your limitations quite easily with them. Like, it's not as if they're one-trick wonders, but they are very, very inappropriate. They are more like your hooligan end of your naked machines, where it has the ability to be a bit more docile and a bit more rounded, and it just feels a bit more refined as an all-round package. If you want a all-out hooligan machine, I wouldn't say this is the bike. I'd say go for one of the other three. But for something that's got a bit more of that wow factor, it's a bit gentler and a bit calmer, this is definitely a bike, and that engine is probably the main reason for that. It's just that little bit more docile and a little bit less inclined to go a bit crazy. But saying that, there are some drawbacks. For starters, this is £5 under 15 grand, so you're looking at £14,995. Whichever way you spin it, that is a lot of money. But in all honesty, I do think it's worth it. I'm lucky enough to ride a lot of bikes, and I don't know why, but it just has that wow factor. When I open up the garage and I see them naughty, sharp looking headlights, it just makes me grin from ear to ear. And even riding through towns and villages, it's just got that special Ducati zest that gets heads turning and people looking, and it feels special to ride. But it's still not quite perfect. The mirrors, they vibrate a lot. The dash tends to vibrate quite a bit as well if you're sort of going over really bumpy stuff, and it's quite small. There's absolutely no wind protection, although that could be excused, it's a naked bike. And also, the thing that gets me is that there's no cruise control on this. They could have quite easily put that on. For a 15 grand bike, I think that should come as standard, and to be honest, I quite enjoy having it. So to not have that, it's a bit miffing. And also, obviously, it doesn't come with heated grips and it doesn't come with launch control, but them two things can be a bit more excused, I think, on a bike like this. Overall, this bike has been incredibly impressive. It's been exactly what I wanted to be. It's a Panigale, but just with a little bit more road manners. It's a little bit comfier, it's a little bit less focused, it's a little bit more docile in areas, but it can still be a little bit silly thanks to that gearing change. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I wouldn't class it in that upper middleweight naked class. I think this is more of a bike than, say, your 890s, your MT-09s, your Street Triples. Look at this, it's just a nip below a V4 Streetfighter on the road. It will do pretty much everything that bike will do, but it's 5 grand less. And for that saving, you get an incredible bike, you get an amazing electronics package, you get a glorious engine, and you get a beautiful soundtrack. And the best thing of all, you get a big red Ducati in your garage. I love it.